Hey guys, so today we are going to talk about a thematic unit, and what we were tasked with doing was to complete a unit that was all related and had a class in science, social studies, English, and math. So I took high school level and I worked on a thematic unit for the story and the life of Henrietta Lacks and the book The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and I completed my unit around that theme. So I'll give you a view of what it looks like. Well, I can't, but, well, guess I can. This is what it looks like. I set up my lesson plans like this, and they're color-coded. So every different section of the chart that is a different color is a different subject. So all 4 subjects are there. So I designed my lesson plan like we were in a year-long schedule. So like the students went to every class all year long. So in my setup, their day would start with 11th grade, American history, and the objective for the lesson was for students to understand the historical context of the time period during the life of Henrietta Lacks. And so they're going to do that through watching a TED Talk. I love TED Talks. I think they're fantastic, about her life. We're going to do some assignments using ZipGrade. If you haven't done ZipGrade and you're a teacher, do it now. All you have to do is upload your answer key. Your students use these answer sheets that are already have their name on them and everything. All you have to do is take your smartphone, open the ZipGrade app, scan their answer sheet, and you get their score immediately. So what I do is I laminate their answer sheets, and they just bubble them in with Visas, and done. If I'm not giving a test that requires an essay, we use ZipGrade because it's so easy. And we're going to do a group assignment where they're each going to be kind of given different topics from the time period, like the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, the Mississippi appendectomy study, the migration of African Americans from the South for job opportunities, focusing on World War II, Turner Station, and Sparrows Point, and they're each going to kind of look at what life was like from those perspectives. We're going to watch, they're going to get to research on the computer for 30 minutes as a group, and then we'll kind of put into a group discussion about what everyone learned about the time period. And then for homework, they're going to complete a journal entry about the things they've learned and what's changed since that time period. So then, after that, during the day, they move on to Math 3. And in Math 3, the 11th graders are going to do an interactive math activity about cells. We're going to start by kind of having a discussion about what cells are, how big are they, how many cells are in particular organisms. And then we're going to read a passage about Henrietta Lacks and her cancer cells. And then they're going to break up into pairs, and they're going to do a cell discovery activity where they are going to kind of do some research on the computer about what cells are, kind of like a web quest, but not exactly. I'm not going to give them the sites to go to. They're just going to Google it themselves and figure out the information themselves. Then they're going to work on some word problems involving cells, where they're going to have to measure their height, determine how many cells they need, figure out how many cells would be in the height of that individual, and then we're going to kind of come back together and share those in groups. Then we're going to play kind of a Kahoot review game with their phones and the computers, kind of reviewing what we learned about cells, what we learned about the equations that we used, things like that. So a really great way to incorporate the math into the lesson, and they're still talking about the same concept. Kahoot's really awesome technology. If you've never used Kahoot, it is amazing. I love Kahoot. I love everything about it. It's an interactive game. They get to use their phones. You get to use the smart board. It keeps up with who's winning, who's losing, yada, yada. The kids love it. So from math, then they will move on to 11th grade science, which is biology. In biology, they're going to talk about ethics. They're going to have a bell ringer prompt about what we think ethics are. Then they're going to compare and contrast with their shoulder partner. So that's the person who they share their shoulder with, who sits next to them. Then they're going to just kind of talk about what kind of examples of ethics they came up with. We're going to give them the dictionary definition of what ethics is. We're going to kind of do a review of HeLa cells. Then we're going to talk about HeLa cells. We're going to have a PowerPoint and a short video about what HeLa cells are, and kind of looking at how those cells came about, which is obviously through Henrietta Lacks, which is the book we're going to read in English. So again, tying that all together, they're going to be looking at HeLa cells. And then they're going to talk about, in groups, they're going to research on the computer different, drawing conclusions from the different scientific standpoints. How do people feel about the use of HeLa cells? How did Henrietta's family feel? What was the opinion of society, the medical field? What was their reasoning? And what were the legal rights involved in these scientific experiments that occurred, and in the scientific use of our HeLa cells? And the book goes into really a lot of detail about that, about what rights might have been violated. So that's what they're going to work on. So we're going to use a lot of technology in this one. We're going to do a PowerPoint. We're going to watch a video. And then they're going to create a presentation about the information that they had found about their particular topic. And then we're going to share those together. And then for kind of to assess what they think about it, and really to get that writing piece into the science, again, we're going to do a homework journal about what's your opinion about, was the use of these HeLa cells ethical or was it not? So the last class they're going to come to is obviously English. So they've gotten a great foundation of Henrietta Lacks and what she is, and the science behind it, and the math behind it, and the history of the time period. So they have this really great foundational base before they move on to actually reading the story, which is so helpful, especially for your lower functioning students. When they can gather all that information and they know more, it's going to help them understand the story so much more. So for their warm-up, I'm going to quiz them. What's the deal with Henrietta Lacks? Who is she? Tell me about her. They should, by this point in the day, have learned a pretty substantial amount about her. We're going to do an intro PowerPoint about the book and the author. Closed notes for students to keep them following along. Now you will want to make sure that you have those full copies of teacher's notes for your EC or 504 or ELL students that need them. We'll do a who, when, where partner activity using visual representation. So for who, we'll have a picture of who. For where, we'll have a picture of a map. For when, we'll have a picture of a clock and a calendar. And that really gives visual cues to your students who may not understand WH concepts. And there are a lot, especially if you may have any autistic students in your class, they really struggle with that. So using those visual aids helps a ton. So then we're going to divide into groups, give each student a set of 6 vocabulary words for the first part of the book. They're going to define the words, and they're going to go into Quizlet, which is an online quiz program that you can make flashcards, give yourself quizzes, study, things like that, and they're going to enter their information into the class Quizlet. And then everybody will come back together, get all the definitions, again, making sure you have copies of those definitions for your students who get copies of teacher's notes. And then they're going to present them, obviously everybody gets the words, and then for their independent work, we're going to read chapter 1. Now make sure that you have the audio version of the book for any of your students that may get Bookshare or Read Aloud All. We want to make sure that we have that available for them. Either you're going to read it to them or you have some sort of audio format for them to get it. And then for homework, we're going to have them set up a fake book account for a character of their choice from the book. So we're going to give them a character list and have them set up a fake book account, which is awesome for tracking the main events of a story that center around a character or quotes. It's setting up an actual Facebook account for that person, but not on Facebook. It's called Fake Book. It's amazing. If you haven't used it, I suggest using it. My kids love, love, love Fake Book. You can put pictures, you can put quotes, you can put videos. It's amazing. And so that's what they're going to do for homework. So this is a 4-part lesson. Again, it only really works to tie these all 4 together with the science, math, history, and English if they're in that year-long system where they have each of those classes every day. We're going to make sure that across all 4 of these classes, they're getting visual information. They're getting auditory information, activities that allow them to get up and move, those kinesthetic things, involving all these different kinds of ways of learning, differentiating that instruction, and making sure, we're reading independently, we're watching videos, we're listening to PowerPoints, we're working in groups, we're working individually, and that is the best way to get that differentiation and reach all of those students that you're teaching, because that is so crucial and so important. And making sure we're using that technology. I mean, this is how they learn. This is how they do things, guys. They're on the internet, they're on the computer. Like, we got to get where they are. I mean, that's just all there is to it. We have to get to their level. And so it's great to use those technologies. It keeps the class fun. It keeps the class engaging. It keeps it different. You're not just lecturing to them all day. And it's proven to be successful when you differentiate like that. We want to teach the way they learn, which is through technology, not forcing them to learn the way we teach. Something kind of important to remember, not kind of important, extremely important to remember is when they're working in partners, being conscious of what they're doing. I always, always, always circulate the classroom. That makes yourself available for questions or anything like that, but also monitors that we're staying on task, we're not working with our friends, we're not being crazy and getting off topic. That's also something you want to do when you make partners, is to take into consideration your special needs students, your students who might need a little extra help. Pair them with a partner that's going to be good for them, that's going to kind of bring them up. It's going to give them the extra assistance they need, because it's really important. When I'm using multimedia in my classroom, especially if the kids are working independently, you also want to be up and circulating, moving around, making sure that we're not on anything that we shouldn't be. And you should have established solid rules, both district-wide for your school system and for your classroom, about what the expectations are when you're using electronic devices. But just another easy tip. I have set up my classroom where I have a teaching table in the front where my smartboard computer is, where I keep all my worksheets and everything I need for the day up there, and I have a chair up there where I can sit and teach from, and a podium where I can teach from. But my desk where I do all my work during my planning is in the back of the room. So if my kids are working independently or in groups on the computer, if I'm not up circulating, if I need to sit at my desk for some reason, I can see exactly what they're doing. I can see what's on every one of those computer screens. And that's really important to keep that reliability, credibility, keep them focused on what they're supposed to be doing. And really, I find if you set a solid foundation from the start of what your expectations are, it's going to go much smoother. So I hope you enjoyed my talk through of how I would put together a thematic unit about HeLa cells and Henrietta lacks, and how I would incorporate different technologies into that. Those lessons, how I would use multimedia formats of learning, and how we're going to make sure that all of our kids are learning, we're using the differentiated instruction, and we're also keeping ourselves accountable for what we're doing, because that's incredibly important with our education and teaching our young ones to be responsible when they are using the computer. So I hope you had an enjoyable time listening to this video. I hope it was informative for you. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please drop those in the comments below. I'll be happy to get back to you and answer those. Thanks, guys.